Maybe I should take all of you with me to the other side of the world. We're going to Australia! We are going to Australia!
This time last year, 300 hysterical fans were crying, hugging and shaking with excitement at the announcement of Oprah's visit to Australia as part of a joint marketing strategy footed by Tourism Australia. Since its announcement in September of last year, Oprah's visit to Australia has generated more than 86,000 media articles across the world, with an estimated equivalent advertising value of $368 million. However, in light of recent economic concerns with the Australian dollar at record highs, many tourist operators and specialists are left wondering whether her trip was worth the $5 million funded by the Australian government. Professor Larry Dwyer of Marketing, Tourism and Hospitality at the Australian School of Business and President of the International Academy for the Study of Tourism admits that he well overestimated the effect of Oprah's visit in its early stages of planning.
I got it wrong.
Yeah.
And now it's, you look back with hindsight and you see that there are all these factors that were militating against it. But no, I really thought it would be much more successful than it was.
Managing Director of Tourism Australia, Andrew McAvoy, addressed the Mumbrella 360 Marketing Conference in Sydney in June of this year, claiming that the full effect of his team's decision to bring Winfrey to Australia would be felt in 3 to 7 years' time. Professor Dwyer strongly disagrees.
And at the moment, with the high dollar, inconsistent marketing campaigns, lack of investment and so on, I'm not sure that we are going to get such robust forecast numbers, but I think we can say that whatever the forecast, whatever the actual numbers that come to Australia, the Oprah effect will have very little influence because it just hasn't occurred.
The trip included visiting the Great Barrier Reef, wine tasting in the Hunter Valley, experiencing a scenic flight over the Australian outback, visiting Federation Square in Melbourne, and walking the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Dr. David Behrman, Senior Lecturer at the School of Leisure, Sport and Tourism at the University of Technology, Sydney, says that although the investment didn't instigate a short-term boost to the Australian tourism industry, it did succeed in generating a lot of positive publicity for state government bodies.
The main reason for that was that the economic situation in the United States, and in fact in many of the countries in which Oprah is screened, wasn't really conducive to a short-term boost. What it succeeded in doing incredibly well was giving a lot of very positive publicity for Destination Australia. It did that really well.
International travel consultant and executive manager of Flight Centre in Manly, Emma Bradshaw, says that there was an evident boost in interest from international visitors following the screening of Oprah's Great Australian Adventure, but is sceptical of just how many intended trips were translating into figures.
I did hear things from Flight Centre's American business is called Liberty Travel, and I did hear that Liberty Travel's business went up 20, 22, 25% in the first 3 days after her ad campaign or that series of shows came out, which I guess you can't really argue that's a fairly significant jump. I mean, if you're a huge Oprah fan, which most of America is, if you saw all of that kind of stuff, you could easily walk into a travel agent and inquire about inquire about all the amazing places she'd been. I can see that having an effect like that, but I can't see it having a long-term effect on actual money making.
For too long, I think we've relied on our koalas and our kangaroos and the wildlife, which is important and can attract tourists. But we've forgotten about our cosmopolitan cities. We've forgotten about our sophisticated nightlife and so on. We've forgotten about the fine dining and so on. And so I think that there needs to be a re-imaging of Australia. We're not a nation of country hicks.
Dr. Behrman says that the tourism product in Australia is of world standards, however is far too highly priced for a wide range of international visitors.
I think what they might be suffering from is a targeting crisis. So in other words, what's happened is that they've got a really good campaign. The product in this country, the tourism product in this country, the destination, the infrastructure is very, very good indeed. By world standards, it's probably is one of the best. It is, because of the exchange rate, a little bit highly priced, which is a problem. But I think that Tourism Australia is probably not targeting as well as it might do the more budget-oriented market.
Despite tough economic factors, Professor Dwyer believes the Australian tourism industry needs to focus on elements that can be altered, such as the types of investments we make and types of activities and products we develop for tourists, in order to become a priority destination.
Yeah, I mean, well, economic conditions change, you know, and it's difficult to see too far into the future. But I think all commentators would agree that if you're going to have a competitive industry in the future, you've got to do those things that you can do something about. I mean, you may not be able to change the dollar, but what you can do is invest strategically in the types of products that people are going to want. It's fashioning your own tourism future. My view is let 100 flowers or 1,000 flowers bloom. In terms of your marketing strategy, be flexible.